Welcome to this week's episode of Global Money News Review. My name is Ola and I am the founder of the Money with Club. And in these weekly episodes, we discuss the economy, how it affects your pocket, and what you should be doing. And so, if you haven't already, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out amazing content from us. We also have regular money investment, personal finance videos that come up every Thursday at 6 p.m. West African time. So please subscribe to our channel, hit the notification bell, and stay tuned. Of course, if you're listening, you should say hi. You should say hi. I'm always happy to spotlight you once you just say hi, where you're reaching out from, and all. Now, right to the news. Now, the first news. So today we have a little bit of technical issue, and so I'm going to be taking cues from my phone as against the system. And so the first news that I will be highlighting will be from African news, right? Our African news. So obviously we review African, US and Nigerian news. And I'll be highlighting African news today. And what's happening in Africa. Something I wanted to spotlight a little is the fact that Stanbic Bank in Kenya has plugged into the Chinese interbank cross-border interbank payment system. It's called the CIPS. Now, if you've ever tried to transfer money across border, you know that there's something called SWIFT. SWIFT is like a system that connects banks. It's like a messaging system. So, let's say you're moving from one bank to another, one bank in one country to another. There's like a SWIFT code, right? And so that is a message that SWIFT would send from your bank to the other bank, the receiving bank, and then there are intermediary banks in between that they'll move from one bank to another before it finally gets to your destination. Now, what is interesting here, Stanbic Bank is plugging into the Chinese ecosystem, which is separate from and different from the SWIFT that we all know. But what's interesting here is that SWIFT is just a messaging platform, meaning that it's a message sent from your bank to another bank, to another bank, to another bank, before it gets to the bank that the money is supposed to deliver to, and then banks will settle in that order. So that's why it takes time, and that's why there are fees attached to those SWIFT transfers. But what's happening here is that with the Chinese system, it's not just a messaging platform, it's a messaging and a settlement platform at the same time. And so the first thing to highlight here is that there's a lot of trade between Africa and China, and usually you have to go through the SWIFT system, have to go through correspondence banks, have to go through intermediaries before the cash gets to China, and it takes a longer time. But with this plug in, it's actually going to be Swift. Now, what am I highlighting here? There's a lot that has been happening, a lot in the past 2 weeks, 3 weeks, around tariffs, around China and versus America, all that. But this is just highlighting how much China is gaining ground, especially in untapped areas, right? Untapped regions like Africa. Now, for a lot of importers, exporters, people that do trade with China, this is good news. Now, Stanbic has plugged in Kenya. Of course, the fact is, once Stanbic, who's owned by Standard Bank and who is across Africa, once they plug in for one bank, it's just a matter of time before they continue to plug in across their different locations, right? So what are we doing? We're integrating better into the world in a faster way. There are geopolitical conversations around this because China is obviously gaining ground as a world leader, world economic leader type thing. They are actually gaining ground. And so this is one of those things. So it's not just a financial thing, which is good for business people, because if you import, there's direct, you actually don't have to buy dollars to settle in renminbi. With this, there's going to be direct trade. That means you would now have a direct pair, a trading pair between Kenyan shilling and renminbi direct now, and so China is gaining ground. Yeah, but it's quite interesting to watch because things are changing right in front of us. Now, of course, it's important. Oh, I see somebody saying hi. Hi, Shao. Thanks for joining in. I'm popping you up right here. Now, of course, it's important to know that these sessions are powered by the Money with Club. If you do not know the Money with Club, it's a community of investment professionals who learn about investment and take action. So we bring deals, we We structure transactions, we provide education, we bring the best people into the house to teach, to explain, and we are just an amazing community to be a part of. So if you haven't heard about us, please check us out on our website. And if you also haven't joined our community, we have a newsletter community. Please subscribe. I've put the link up there. We also have an event. I mean, what we do is that we have different expressions. This is our media expression where we have a YouTube channel, but we have our community, and we have a financial education school called the Money With School. And we have a workshop that is coming up in about 2 weeks' time. I will talk about it later, but just stick around and all. So let me even see. Okay, I can be scrolling that up as we talk. So now the next news is from who? Aha, the US. Of course, we know that President Trump has just carried everybody up and down in the past week, right? With his decisions. Now, we talked about it a whole lot. We talked about the announcement of the tariffs, but this week there was an update, right? The tariffs were suspended for 90 days for everyone apart from China. Now, it's still the same China America trade war. It has been up and about for a while. We talked about when President Biden put 100% tariff on some certain goods that were coming from China last year. So like 100%, meaning that if the actual price of that good was $20,000, by the time it gets into America, it will be 40,000, right? And it was almost one of those things where you are trying to protect your businesses, your local businesses, but in the end, the local consumer is going to suffer. Now, what has happened in the past week is that after the announcement of the tariffs, there were a lot of negotiations, conversations, visits, and all. And there's a suspension of that tariff for 90 days, most likely for negotiations. However, because China, who is now entering into his big boy era, refused to come and negotiate on the terms of the United States. What we have found is that the United States says, no, you know what, those tariffs, we're going to increase it and we are not touching it. We need to have a conversation, right? And it's quite interesting to note. Now, on the back of all this drama, oil prices took a massive hit. Oil prices at the start of April were around $70 to the barrel. It hit a low of $59 to the barrel. Now, that is very scary. It's important to note that sometimes there are unintended consequences. America is trying to negotiate on all fronts. It is actually, it doesn't necessarily or exactly sound very strategic for you to be negotiating and fighting everybody at the same time. At least put them in blocks or regions or something. Let there be some approach to it, right? Because how many people can you really negotiate with at the same time? You know, but for whatever reason, this is what is happening. And the stock market tanked. There was like a massive sell-off. Oil prices also tanked. Now, what's most interesting is the fact that US treasuries also, there was a sell-off on US treasuries. Why am I highlighting that? Because before now, all of my life, I kid you not, all of my life, when there is uncertainty, everybody flies to US treasuries. And for the very first time, there is uncertainty and people are selling. Why? Because the actual risk right now is the United States. Now, that is something that we need to actually see because it puts the whole global economy in a place of massive uncertainty, meaning that these waters that we are in right now, we actually have not had to deal with it before. And it's very, very, very important to note. Now, oil prices tanked, right? Who would it impact? First, it would impact businesses, oil sector, oil producing countries, the revenue of oil producing countries. It would affect oil companies themselves, right? And then as you step down, it affects consumers. But from a different flip side, right? Because if oil prices come down, especially in countries that do not have subsidized fuel, prices are going to come down. And gas prices, when gas prices come down, everybody tends to feel it, right? And so it's one of those chicken and egg things. Do we really want oil prices to come down? What is the major impact on the global economy? And then what is the impact on individuals themselves? Now, for you as an individual watching all this, I think that's the most important point I need to make here. For you as an individual watching all this, number one, recognize that there is a lot of noise. There's a lot of noise. Why do I say there's a lot of noise? Because number one, if you are not resident in America, if you're not resident in America, and you are not an exporter to America, the tariffs don't affect you. At least in the near to midterm. The tariffs are not your problem. They are not your problem. What you should be looking out for is who are the winners in this policy change and who are the losers. How do I align with the winners? What do I mean? Um, if for example you are selling a product that, so let me use Nigeria as an example. Nigeria is a net exporter to America, but that's because we sell oil. But from the news that we see, oil is not impacted by this tariff war, like it's not impacted by the tariff war. So that's a plus for anyone, or that's a breather, and let me not say a plus for anyone doing in the oil and in energy space, right? But what are the other things that Nigeria exports? Nigeria exports lead, Nigeria exports cashew, Nigeria exports flowers, right? Very interesting, right? Of course, Kenya also does that. Now, if you have a business or you're selling a product or exporting a product that America does not fundamentally produce, the fact is that as long as you have your demand and people still need that product, and you know that, okay, even if it's flowers, for example, around Valentine's Day, around Mother's Day, there'll always be that surge of demand, and no matter what is, people will close their eyes and buy. You know that even though there's an additional 14% increase in your costs, it's not that significant enough to slow your business down. So if you are given who to invest in, that's the kind of business to invest in. What am I highlighting? That in every situation, there are winners and there are losers. It's not about the noise of what tariffs are, all that, because you can't control that. What you can control is who are the winners in this situation. That's what you would, and think of that position and think of when we talked about like 2 weeks ago. And I mean, it's also recommended to go back to listen to the other things that we have talked about in the past weeks. When you think about Hyundai, for example, that on the back of this tariff announcement and all these threats, they just said, okay, we're moving 20 billion, we're investing 20 billion in America to produce our cars locally, to bypass all this noise, because America is a key market for them. That is positioning, right? So there's a lot of noise, but you have to be guided. Don't be caught up and don't get your heart up in the air, because every media house knows that this is trending, and so we'll keep reinforcing it. So you think that the world is about to crash. But I kid you not, there are winners and there are losers. It's the same way Stanbic is plugging into the Chinese interbank payment system. That is a win, because there's a massive trade flow between China and Africa, if you get what I mean. So that's the most important thing here as an individual, because there are winners in this thing. When if oil prices come down, your gas price is going to come down. If you are in a country where gas price is a major problem, transportation logistics is a major problem, that is actually a win, if you get what I mean. It might not affect everyone, but if you're a business that's highly dependent, or a significant part of your budget is on fuel, that is a win. So don't just look at it as, oh, the world is about to crash. You have to be more objective. Don't follow everybody like that. And then, okay, I would like to talk about an event that we're having, or a workshop that we are hosting at the end of the month. Let me see. I think I can pop it up here. Yes. Personal finance workshop. If you know that you've created a financial plan for your business, but you don't have a financial plan for your home, for your family, right? The question is, the financial plan you had for your business, did you know how everything will pan out before you created it? But you saw the headwinds and you still fought through, but you had an anchor. We must achieve this, right? Why don't you do that for your business? Why don't you do that for your personal finances? Can you explain? Why? Like, why actually do you not do that for your personal finances? And if you don't know how, this is a financial planning seminar, financial planning workshop. It's virtual. So you can plug in from wherever you are. There'll be live, there'll be replays. You have access to support for a month. You'll be connected to partners for execution afterwards. Because the most important thing after knowing what to do is actually doing it. Like actually doing it. So I want to invite you to the Beat the Odds webinar workshop. Details, you can scan the barcode for the details. Please share with a friend. The link will also be in the description. You don't want to miss it. You actually do not want to miss it. It's a paid workshop, yeah. So the information on payments and all that is there, and you can pay in either USD or Naira. Tell a friend about it, share with someone. It is going to be impactful. The last session I had was 2 years ago. The impact was amazing. People actually learned a whole lot. People's lives were transformed, and it was like, okay, I have clarity. I can see possibility. I need to stay. I know the things I need to do. like to actually set up. So please don't miss it. And then finally, we're going to Nigerian news, right? Nigerian news. Oh yes, the Federal Executive Council has renewed the Naira for crude deal, and I also want to talk about the oil price impact on Nigeria, right? First of all, we know that this Naira for crude deal has been significant in one, stabilizing exchange rate in Nigeria, and then two, um, distressing the economy. Like, when there's that sense of we don't know what next, we don't know what next, that uncertainty. This Naira for crude has actually distressed the Nigerian economy significantly. And you might not have known what it was, but just that everybody just calm down and say, okay, fuel price is going to be stable for a while, right? And because we are selling oil to the refineries in Naira, so they can sell oil to us in Naira. Whatever is happening outside of the world is not our problem. And that's what we have had for a while. And then what literally happened, if you don't know, was that as soon as the 6 months contract expired and they had to switch back to buying dollars to buy crude, and then buying dollars to buy the fuel, because the refineries had to buy dollars to buy the crude, and so they could not sell in Naira when they bought in dollars, so they had to sell to the marketers in dollars. And so we saw that additional pressure again. That's one of the reasons why exchange rate has moved slightly, as you have seen. But the Federal Executive Council has woken up to say, you know what, this thing is critical to the economy, this is critical to Nigeria, we need to keep it in Naira for now. I think that is good, and that's it, and it's a fact, right? It is something that is critical to the country right now, especially with all the things that are happening outside, especially with the fact that oil prices have come down significantly. The Nigerian budget for oil, for our the budget, the federal budget, is banked at $70, 70 plus dollars to the for a barrel of crude. What does that mean? The bulk of our revenue is from oil sales, from crude oil sales. And so what they do in creating a budget for the year is that they will say how much can we produce, and what is our estimate of where crude oil prices will be in the year. And that's what they use to base their revenue. And they now say that they'll borrow the balance. Now, if our budget is at 70 and fuel prices are at 60, 61, 62, 59, there's already a problem. There is already a problem. There's a deficit. Is a deficit. And if we're already planning to borrow like 30, 40% of the budget, and there's already a deficit as it is, then we know that there's a problem on the government spending side. Now, what is the flip side? What is the impact of that? Just so that you understand, the government has less capacity to do the capital investments that will carry us into a better place as an economy. That is the major impact. That is the major impact, because they'll be forced to pay salaries. They'll be forced to do all those like recurring things, interest payments, blah blah blah. They'll be forced to do all those things. But the thing that they that will suffer will most likely be the capital projects. That is actually how it works. And if you don't do capital projects, the country is not actually developing. So in the long term, it's almost like a cycle where we'll keep going around in circles. Let's understand the impact. But on the flip side, as oil prices are low, fuel prices are going to come down. So you see, when you go to the filling station and they tell you 700 naira per liter, you sort of kind of be a little happy. Yeah. Savings, especially for individuals, businesses, estates, it will just bring down some of the stress. So, like I said, there will always be winners in every situation. It's very important for you to say, how do I position to be on the side of the winning team, right? Because in fact, there has never been a time of complete economic certainty. There would always be those things that will make you wonder what next. There would always be those things, but you have to position, you have to have foresight. Even these oil prices that have come down, just by the fact that President Trump won the elections in November last year, and President Trump is all for shale oil and increasing production of shale oil. We knew that there was going to be additional or excess supply of oil in this year, so that it came down to 59 is not surprising, because there was an expectation that if we were at 70, 80 last year, it's going to come down. It is going to come down. So even our budget, it was obvious if you were looking that this budget expectation at 70 may not entirely pan out as is, and even our production is not where it should be. But in all these things, it's important to know who the winners are and to align. Just a final reminder. Oh, I see some more people on. It would have loved for you to say hi so I can spotlight you. But yeah, just don't forget that you can't outsource your health and your finances. You have to engage. No one can go to the gym on your behalf and you'll be fit, and nobody can eat vegetables on your behalf and you'll be healthy. It's the same way that you cannot outsource your investment, financial, economic decisions and expect good outcomes. You have to engage. One way to engage is to sign up for our workshop. You can sign up as a couple, you can invite your friends, you can invite people that you talk to about money. And of course, there's a discount code. Yes. Oh, the discount code that is there has expired. Now the discount code is beat 10 because we had a window when it was 25% off. Now it's 10% off. Registration closes on the 22nd, which is next week, Monday or Tuesday, I presume. No, not next week, the week after, 22nd. Yeah. And then, of course, what happens? Let me even tell you that you get worksheets before the session. There's pre-session tasks that you need to do, right? Just to get you in the right frame, just to get you have your data because it's personal finance. At the end of the session, you would have a personal financial plan. Like you would, it's almost like a sitting with a financial advisor to put your finances in order. If it sounds like something that you need, if it sounds like something that you need, I repeat, if it sounds like something that you need, then it is just the cost of a bag or the shoe that you are wearing right now. You need to invest in yourself. Take care. Have a beautiful week ahead.